Can you tell us a little bit about the art scene in the 60s in Baghdad and how it connected to literature? Do you answer to the poem with your drawings or is it the other way around? You mentioned Iraq being your inner soul when you talked about this work. Can you tell us about this show? I'm so delighted to be here with Dia in the studio. So I thought, as Basia and Ada said, we could begin with the beginning. And you were born in 39 in Baghdad. And I wanted to know how it all began. How did you come to art? How did art come to you?
I'm born in the old side of Baghdad, and from the beginning, since I was a child, I have very much interest in doing a lot of drawings. The most of the time, I was using some magazine and trying to copy this magazine. When I went to the secondary school, the teacher was helpful with the idea that if you can start doing something from what is around you rather than just copying. So I did. I was at that time following his instruction in that way. But later, after I finished the school, we don't have at that time Academy of Fine Art. So I went to study archaeology as alternative. But after 1 year in the university, I managed to start with the Institute of Fine Art at the evening studies, and I stayed there for 5 years.
And can you tell us a little bit about archaeology? I mean, Panofsky always talked about the idea that the future is somehow invented with fragments from the past.
Yeah, but archaeology is very helpful in the sense of two sides. One of them, which I become very familiar with a lot of objects, which I have the right to handle it in a way, and also to have to know a history of art, all part of Iraq mainly, and also Syria and Egypt, and that's one helped me a lot. And or maybe this has influenced me very much towards the idea of doing work which is more related to my history rather than just copying work of European artists.
And that leads us to the question also of your mentors of artists who inspired you, because at the university you had actually a mentor with the Iraqi artist Hafid al-Drubi, and you told me before that you learned a lot from him. Yet at the same time, it was actually other artists whose work was really important for you. Can you tell us a little bit about these early influences?
At that time, I have some knowledge of two artists, mainly Mahmoud Sabri and Jawasali. But because of my background with the archaeology, I became more interested in the work of Jawasali, who tried to he and the group of artists he tried to create art which is he called it Iraqi art, and this Iraqi art depends on very much on the history of our civilization, either Islamic or Sumerian.
I spoke a lot with my late friend Munir Sharuri Farman Farmayan, and she told me about this uh, journeys she made in Iran. No, she would go from Tehran all over Iran and look at the past and be inspired for her art. And you, in a similar way, did a lot of travels in Iraq. And I wanted to ask you how actually this material you saw during this trip kind of inspired you. Can you tell us
Yeah,
a little bit
because
about these journeys, these early journeys?
yeah, no, because also when I start working with the Iraqi Museum, I was responsible to exhibit artifacts, and that gave me the opportunity to go to the north. For example, I worked for 2 years in Mosul to exhibit a new museum at that time. After that, I went to south of Iraq, Nasiriyah, to exhibit a new museum. At the same time, after I finished, I had work in Baghdad to have ethnography museum. All these helped me in a way that first to be very close to my history, and second to give me the opportunity to go around Iraq and see what is going on there. Actually, I mean, for example, with especially with particularly with the folklore item I managed to find a lot of work which I haven't seen before when I was in Baghdad.
And the city is, of course, also where artists gather, where artists congregate. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about Karim Haida and Javad Selim and the pioneer generation. And it would be interesting to hear.
They are different generation. Kadhim is not from the same generation of Jawad. Jawad, he was, and Faiq Hassan, and Hafez Durubi. This is the first pioneer artist. And most of, in a way that they got a museum, all part Abamiya somewhere, and also the Institute of Fine Art at the same time there. And most of the time, I think they were in that part of Baghdad.
And
But Kadhim came later. Kadhim came after 60. He was, when he was as a student, because he was studying university at the same time, he was exhibiting some of his work. But when he came to Baghdad, it was mid 60s.
when you left university, you became a founding member of the New Vision Group, the Al Roya Al Jadia, and that included also Rafa Naziri and Ismail Fatah Al Turk. Can you tell us a little bit about the group, the New Vision Group? What bound you together? What brought you together? And what was the manifesto? Because you said that you were the new generation. There was clearly a rupture with the previous generation.
This is the what had happened at that time because most of the pioneer artists at that time they are in control of everything. So I thought at that time, with when many artists came from their study abroad, Nasri was in China, and when he came back, Ismail Fattah was in Italy, in Rome, when he came back then to Baghdad. So I thought I suggest an idea to have a group, and the group is not to be a group for exhibition, but also only because I wrote the manifesto, and the manifesto mainly it's about the idea that no longer we talk about Iraqi art like the Baghdad group talking about. We have to talk about pan-Arab art. And also because of the political situation at that time, we were very much supported with Palestinian right to have their state. The combination of between politics and the idea to be more pan-Arab, we try to be exhibit outside and to have exhibition, for example, personal exhibition. Till that time, I don't remember I saw one personal exhibition of by the pioneer. We start doing have a personal exhibition, and it's very much a difficult side of that time because of the market is not there and the support of the government is not that much. So most of us, we try our best to do something which is a little bit different than our pioneer art.
And it's interesting also because one of the characteristics of the New Vision Group, and that's something which is also very characteristic for a lot of your early work, is the incorporation actually of Arabic script. And there is a text you wrote because writing was always important. Also, you wrote not only the manifesto, you wrote
Yeah.
a lot of texts, and you wrote there that I'm quoting here: "My view of the Arabic letter was not that of traditional calligraphers, nor was it metaphysical hyperbole, but rather it was based on the demands of the canvas in the Western sense, as opposed to a superficial understanding of identity, which uses or misuses tradition in all its forms and has no relationship to modern art." So I was wondering, following this quote, if you can tell me a little bit more about how you viewed Arabic script and the incorporation of it into your artwork.
Yeah, but this is part of the identity problem. What to do with the how to create something which is related to our history. So I thought I was very much influenced with different parts, mainly by Sumerian, and also I got more interest in Arabic calligraphy. And in combination with Arabic calligraphy, very much you have the ability to create abstract kind of images in that sense. Also, the main question at that time, how you can use Arabic calligraphy without creating something which is very much graphic rather than a painting. The paint, we don't have the knowledge of painting. This is very much imported from Europe. I mean,
Yeah.
in Islamic art, we have a manuscript, which is mainly something illustration with the images and some text. With painting, it's a bit of a problem for us how we manage to create something which can be accepted in terms of a painting in that sense. Like we don't have the support rather than from our history or from the also from our pioneer. Our pioneer, most of them have they're very much influenced by European artists, except maybe Jawad and Mahmoud Sabri, who try to go to different direction.
And before we talk about London and your move to London, I wanted to stay a little bit more in Baghdad and ask you about the studio and the place you work, because of course we mentioned the city before, and I was curious where your studio was in Baghdad, and a little bit if you could share the map of Baghdad, of you and your artist friends at the time, the cafes you met, the studios of your colleagues, also the places where the museums were, the universities, the studios, the
Well,
libraries. Can you tell us about your Baghdad in the
yeah, it's
60s?
from my generation. Most of the artists they are from outside Baghdad. So most of that their time they don't have the opportunity to have a studio reality. Maybe from our group, maybe only me and Nasser got a studio. I have a studio which is at the entrance of my house, and I managed to sometime invite my friend or artist or even a collector to come to there. The map of Baghdad at that time it's not that huge. I mean, maybe from my studio to the Museum of Modern Art about 20 minutes. From Nasiri about half an hour. It's not that big city at that time. But the main things when it happened that when we had the Iraqi Artist Society financed by Kolbekian, it became a center for us to meet
There was an
from that time.
exchange with Beirut at the
Yeah,
time. Can you
yeah.
tell us about that? Was it a cultural exchange, an artistic exchange? Or?
Baghdad is very far from any influence of Europe. When I first went to Beirut, which is 68, for us, this is the paradise. You can see a lot of fantastic book about art. The freedom they have a fantastic more better freedom than in Iraq in the relation between people there, and also they got different two or three very important galleries. I mean, for example, the gallery one, which is run by Yusuf Al Khal, a very well-known poet, Lebanese poet. Uh, in this gallery, he exhibit. I saw the work of Ibrahim Sulhi, for example, Muhammad Shibrin, and also the work of other the Egyptian sculptures.
And there was, of course, a lot of exchange between art and literature in Beirut at the time. And I was curious because we are here surrounded by many of your amazing artist books in the studio.
Yeah.
And a lot of these artist books are collaborations with poets,
Yes.
Adonis, Mahmoud Darwish,
Yeah.
different poets, also your own writing,
Yeah.
a lot of your drawings. And I was wondering at that moment, this very vibrant art scene in Baghdad in the 60s. Can you tell us a little bit about this exchange between art and literature? And just here, yeah, it would be great if you can describe a little bit the art scene in the 60s in Baghdad and how it connected to literature.
My beginning it was when I was studying archaeology, when I found the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the most important piece of literature in that sense. And from at that time also I get some knowledge of Al-Hallaj, the Sufi poet, and other poet, for example, Shakir Badr al-Sayyab. I don't know them, but at that time, because of what we got of the books which I managed to got some. I did some drawing at that time in '60s, but most of my work became more important in that sense during '70s when I start meeting other poets and the government spent a lot of money at that time to publish books of different poets and become part of this system to have each poet, when he got his book to be published, will ask artists to illustrate it.
And so, can you tell us about how this works? Do you answer to the poem with your drawings, or is it the other way around? How is the process?
I prefer to not to read. I prefer to listen to the poem. And this is what give me the opportunity to do something which I enjoy rather than doesn't mean that I'm following the text. I don't care about this that much. I try to get something which can enrich the poem rather than do illustration to it.
My Broken Dream is also an enormous artwork, and you you mentioned Iraq being your inner soul when you talked about this work. Can you
Yeah,
tell us
this is a
about
work. This is a work which is in a way because of 2003 when the American and British or not, no, no, they toppled Saddam. I thought something will be changed. Definitely, we will have something a different government, different politics. But in reality, the start of the fighting between the sectarian mentality of the government at that time create a problem to not to be like what had happened in South Africa, for example, when Mandela came to power. He shake hand with one of the most of his enemy. And Iraq's become the other way around. It's become mentality of revenge, which create a problem to a lot of people. And for me, this is part of what the dream which I thought one day I can go and visit Iraq. But what had happened after that with this sectarian conflict, it became too difficult for me. So I have to do something which is in a way recording my feeling at that time or my upset with what had happened to Iraq.
another statement you made was in 2010 when you curated the exhibition called My Homeland at Azzawi in Dubai. We looked at the catalog before, and that was another project actually which responded to the devastation of Iraq following the American invasion. Can you tell us about this show?
Yeah, but this is the same. All these after 90s, I got become more related to works which is about Iraq, which I haven't visited since 80s. I mean, because you can read, you can have a knowledge from a friend, from contact of some part of my family who's still there. I got this work, which is when President Bush, he said he was at the end of the fight, the mission conflict, something which is really, he got no idea what had happened. The real fight in Iraq is after the invasion. The destruction of what had happened to Iraq is after that, because when the museums destroy a lot of work which is stolen, and many places which is also the library, for example, burnt completely. All these happened after the wars stopped, actually.
So it's a farm war. It's like was like an extinction.
Yes, yeah, because of the what had happened is the complete destruction of the country.
Rainer Maria Rilke wrote a little book, which is an advice to a young poet. What would in 2021, now 2022, we're already in 2022, what would in 2022 be your advice to a young artist?
To young artists to, like what I did, to challenge themselves and do something related to their way of thinking rather than copying others.
And what about the future? You once said the future is too short.
Yeah, I think so. It's life. You don't know what can be happen tomorrow. So work like something you will last forever. At the same time, you have to expect something will happen tomorrow.
I mean, there could not be a better conclusion. Thank you so much. This is
Thank
great.
you very much.